To live alone is to meet yourself. I met myself for the first time in July of 2021. After 22 years of living with either family or, more recently, college roommates, I moved into my first solo apartment and received a very swift introduction to the real world. With a new city, new job, new home, and new person to get acquainted with. That person being myself. Up until this point, life had been so planned, so clear, so straightforward. No time or opportunity to really question what was next, just an emphasis on doing well right now. Which also meant there wasn't a whole lot of time to really sit with, get to know, or break down who I was. But living alone forced me to do that. Living alone made me happier than any friend, more fulfilled than any career or hobby, and taught me more than any teacher or mentor ever could have. It was also the single hardest thing I've ever had to do. I will miss it so much, and I cannot recommend it enough. Let's start with the highs of living by yourself because it legitimately rocks. Growing up, I shared a room with my little brother, and although I had my own room in college, 3 roommates and thin walls made it feel more like a big dorm room than a place to my own. So living in a 1-1 apartment was the first time I ever really, truly had my own space. This was a liberating and brand new feeling, and although at times it was overwhelming, it was something that I learned to love. How did I want my living room to look? My bedroom? What were my kitchen cleaning habits? What was in my fridge? These were all questions that nobody answered. Nobody could answer, but me. So slowly, over time, for the first time, my space became an extension of me and my personality. There were my favorite coffee mugs that never really got put away, only washed and set out to dry before getting picked back up the next morning. Scattered around my apartment were the little things I'd pick up at the antique store a couple blocks down the road, the succulent I'd pick up from the farmer's market, or the books that caught my eye at some store that I'll likely never read the first page of. My guitar, something that I only started playing after I started living here, hung on my wall, and an old golf club leaned against the corner of my living room. I could play my music as loudly or as softly as I wanted. I could hang up or take down whatever I felt appropriate. This place was more than a little box with some doors. It felt nostalgic, like it had memories. It felt like me. It was me. But it did not feel that way on day one. There is one overly glaring obstacle associated with living alone, and that's the alone part. For most of us, being totally alone is a foreign and oftentimes negative feeling. When left alone, the idle mind can take us to places that maybe we don't want to go, face things maybe we don't want to face, or trick us into thinking our reality isn't what it is. Nobody wants to do the dishes by themselves in silence. That is, until you get comfortable with being alone. In other words, until you meet yourself. Part of the scariness of the idle mind is the thought of having to look inward, to see who you really are. And a lot of people fear they won't like what they see. And whether you do or you don't, that process can be terrifying. And I know that because it was for me. Honestly, it was awful for me. When I first moved in, I had a terrible time. I hated that I was alone. I felt so isolated, so cut off. When I would sit with myself, I found that there were things I really didn't like about the Eddie that I was. I didn't like some of my habits. I didn't think I was living up to my potential. I realized that I wasn't as happy as I was letting on, and it scared me. Especially as the reality of real life being forever started to set in. I didn't handle it well at first. But eventually, I stopped fighting it. I took a half step back, and I got to know myself. I approached it not with anger or frustration, but with a curiosity and an almost analytical perspective. Like I was actually meeting or studying someone else. Why did I do certain things? Why did I like certain things? What didn't I like? How did I want to feel, physically and emotionally? It was tough, but it was necessary. It was eye-opening and made me so much more confident in my day-to-day life. I questioned my intentions far less and trusted myself more. I tried to stop doing the things that I found were hurting me or taking me away from my actual passions or interests or happiness. In very short order, being alone, living alone, went from something I hated to something that I never wanted to let go of. All of a sudden, I didn't mind doing the dishes in silence. A pretty universal telltale sign that two people are comfortable with one another is the ability to sit and do nothing with that person. Does that silence bring awkwardness? Or can both people sit comfortably without pressure to fill the void or entertain? You see this mostly with siblings or best friends. It's a beautiful thing, and it's something we should strive to feel within ourselves. Can you sit in silence with yourself and not get uncomfortable? Can you sit in silence with yourself and feel comfortable with that person? Living alone puts that to the test. I've lived in my little 1-1 apartment for 4 years as of this month. My little sanctuary, that I fought like hell to get away from at first, has seen a lot of growth these past 48 months and has taught me more about life and myself than I could have ever hoped to learn. I feel very, very strongly that I'm far better off now than I was prior to living here, and I attribute a lot of that to having to get comfortable being alone and everything that it took to get to that comfort. Living alone is cool for a lot of reasons and important for equally as many. So if you have the opportunity to, without breaking the bank, of course, I implore you to do so. And I'd love to hear all about it. If you do live alone, what's your favorite part about it? If not, what do you think is either alluring or scary about living by yourself? If you've made it this far, thank you. I genuinely appreciate each and every view, like, and comment, and it means a lot to me that I can share these essays with you all. I hope you're able to take away something from these little tangents too. Remember to laugh for any and no reason at all, and I'll talk to you later.